Here's the story that most people think they know. Trump hated Jerome Powell. He called him a stubborn mule. He called him Mr. Too Late. And he spent years screaming that the Fed needed to cut rates. So Trump replaced him with his guy, Kevin Warsh. He installed him as the new Federal Reserve chair. And the assumption was rate cuts are coming. Trump gets what Trump wants, right? There's a problem with that assumption. Kevin Warsh may not actually be doing what Trump expected him to. And if you're one of the millions of Americans who are waiting for lower mortgage rates, well, you need to understand what's going on before you make any decisions, because that might not actually be coming down the pike anytime soon. First, let's back up for a second here, because context really actually matters here. See, Trump pushed hard to get Powell to cut the rates. At one point, even opening a criminal investigation at the Department of Justice over supposed building renovations that went over budget. Now, Powell himself said that this was a pressure campaign to get him to cut the rates. And the thing is that a federal judge agreed with Powell and said it was unjustified intimidation. Eventually, the DOJ dropped the investigation against Powell entirely. Now we have Warsh, who has sailed through the confirmation with Congress and gotten approved 54 to 45 as of May 16th. Now, Warsh is sworn in here, and Trump has publicly stated before that he would be disappointed if a Warsh-led Fed did not lower rates. That's about as direct as a president can get with a Fed chair. So you think that Warsh would do exactly what was expected and deliver the rate cuts. Except at the confirmation hearings, it looked a little different. Warsh said, and quote, "Monetary policy independence is essential." He called himself an independent actor. He said Trump never asked him to commit to any specific rate decision. And when Senator Elizabeth Warren accused him of being a, quote, sock puppet for Trump, he pushed back. Now, here's where it gets very interesting for home buyers. Warsh has a long track record. Before, he was known as what they call hawkish. So being hawkish means that you take inflation very seriously. He's cautious about cutting rates, and he is a big believer in shrinking the Fed's balance sheet. Now, the last part of that really matters more than most people realize. The Fed has been holding on to trillions of dollars in bonds since the pandemic. When the Fed holds those bonds, it keeps long-term interest rates artificially lower. When the Fed sells them, a process called quantitative tightening, bond prices fall, yields rise, and mortgage rates follow the yields upward. Now, Warsh has been vocal about wanting to reduce the Fed's balance sheet. He described himself as a regime change candidate at the Fed, and he has shown no real appetite to step in and support the bond market if long-term yields spike. Core inflation right now just jumped from 2.4% in February to 3.8% in April. That is not a number that gives a hawkish Fed chair cover to cut aggressively, like what Trump wants. So we've got a president who wants rates slashed and a Fed chair who, based on everything he's said and done in the past, and believes the job is right now, he's likely to stay tight, shrink the balance sheet, and not blink on inflation. That is a collision course, and your mortgage rate is caught in the middle. So, now here's the part I did not expect when I started looking into all of this. So weird. Some financial analysts are actually pointing at this exact situation and saying that a 30-year treasury bond is suddenly one of the most attractive income plays available right now. The thing is, it's so weird. Think about this. If Warsh holds the line and long-term yields stay elevated, the Fed isn't coming in to suppress them. You can lock in government-backed returns on a 30-year treasury at yields that haven't been available in decades. Now, I'm not telling you to go do this, and please talk to a financial advisor, because I am not one before you make any kind of decisions like this. It's just kind of weird. Things are changing quite in different ways. But I think it's important to understand that the same policy environment that makes it painful for home buyers is potentially interesting for income that's focused for investors for the long term. So it's the same situation and completely different outcomes depending on which side of the equation you're on. All right. So what can you actually do with all of this information? First off, if you're betting on a significant rate relief this year because Trump put a new Fed chair in, you better think again. The assumption that Trump's pick will equal lower rates and get you in a place where you can do it and get it cheap, that's not holding up. So it's Warsh's own philosophy has shown that he is not just going to rubber stamp anything Trump wants. Next, you have to watch the core inflation numbers, and you have to see this data point because it determines everything. If it starts cooling consistently, the pressure's on Warsh to actually loosen up and cut the rates. If it stays elevated or keeps climbing, he has every justification to do exactly what his track record has suggested that he's going to do anyway. And finally, understand the chain. So inflation data leads to the Fed's posture. The Fed posture then drives Treasury yields, and Treasury yields drag mortgage rates. The chain doesn't care about what's happening with politics. It doesn't care what Trump wants. It responds to data. So follow the chain and you will always be able to get ahead of the headlines. Here's what I keep coming back to though. With this story, Trump spent years fighting the Fed to get the rates lower. He replaced Powell with someone he thought would actually deliver on this. The guy he picks turns out to have a long track record of caring more about inflation than rate cuts. And it's already showing in his record that he's going to take this direction that he thinks is best, whether the White House wants it or not. So whether this is good or bad actually depends on your perspective. But for anyone sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy a house, the honest answer right now is that the relief that you wanted is not guaranteed, and the timeline just got less certain. Now, if this helped you understand anything that's going on, be sure to subscribe. I try to break down this stuff so that people can understand and make choices that work for them. Drop a comment below if you've been waiting to buy or if you're locked out right now. I want to hear from you. I want to know what's going on with you. So until next time, have a great day. Remember, think differently, take control, be a renegade.